Well, welcome to another season of AY After Hours. As you can tell, one of the things that we have new and improved this year is our new set. So glad to see that come to fruition this year.
So this is our Q&A episode. We've been collecting questions from our audience, and we're going to take some time out to answer some of those questions today. Obviously, Doug and I know we're not the most equipped to answer some of your questions, so we brought in some experts who do know a lot about these kind of things. So welcome Jim Francis and Ken Lenz from our water department.
Thank you.
So the first question that we have is from Dane F. at Wind Waterworks. And the question is, what is the advantage of a coil or dual coil pit setter over a riser pit setter or standard setter in a pit?
I'll take that.
Okay.
So first of all, a pit, what you got to know is the pit goes down to the water line. So when you look down into the water meter pit, you're looking down into the ground. And warm temperatures come up out of the ground. So that's kind of the key to the riser style versus the coil style meter pit. So the coil allows the meter to be lowered down into the ground and stay warmer and potentially keeping it from freezing. So it all has to do with the depth of the water service line.
So a lot of that has to do with the freeze line, so to speak, as far as how deep it goes.
It does.
Okay.
Yeah, and differing across the United States depending on how deep they need to put these pits, right?
Yes. Yep. They'll put insulating pads in the water meter pit, and that keeps the warmer air from the earth keeps it down inside the pit and keeps it from freezing. That's why the riser style pits don't freeze. They're less likely to freeze too if they keep an insulator in there and keep the warm temperatures inside the pit.
What's the deepest pit that we make? The tallest, I guess.
The deepest, we've sent some to Alaska, and they go 10 feet. So they're burying their water lines 10 feet deep. Yeah.
Okay, next question. Will your team start making more AIS, American Iron and Steel products, to spec on water main projects? Many projects are being funded by EPA loans and require this to be used. And this was from Darren S. at Fergram.
Yeah, so I'd say that's a great question because that's coming up every day. We've been doing AIS for probably as long as Ken can remember.
But what does AIS stand for somebody maybe that doesn't know?
So AIS is the American Iron and Steel Act. So it's an act that the government passed saying that there's so much percentage of the product needs to come from the United States, like a United States manufacturer. So the raw material and how it's made can't be from import. So the AIS Act, the American Iron and Steel Act, the product needs to be, normally it's almost 100% needs to be made in the United States. So we are coming out with more and more patterns and designs for castings or steel items that are made here in the United States.
Hey listeners, Doug here. Just wanted to hop on and give you a PSA that the AIS Act applies to steel and iron only, not brass. Again, I repeat, steel and iron only. Okay, that's it. Back to the show. One of the other questions that we had is from Mike S. from Simmons Pump. And the question is, will the Ranger fitting work will the Ranger fitting work with an SDR11 poly pipe?
So the answer to that would be yes. Now, the SDR11 is an IPS iron pipe sized, so the Ranger will fit different pipes, different tubes within the 1 inch size or 3/4, and SDR11 falls within that. So as long as you have a pipe stiffener, tubing stiffener, you'll be fine with SDR11.
So with that being said, you look at 3/4 inch pipe. Will it fit every single 3/4 inch pipe that's out there, or are we limited, or is there any limitation as far as?
There's a range.
Okay.
There's a range. You fit within the range, yeah.
Okay, good.
And then why is the stiffener so important?
Well, there's a torque, so you tighten most fittings down to a torque, but the Ranger is tightened to a torque, and so the stiffener adds stability to the inside of the tube. And when you tighten the torque down, you don't want to cave in the tubing and stop the flow of the water. So the main thing you're trying to do is support the ID of the tubing.
And that's one of the things we talk about with a lot of our installers is the importance of the stiffeners and
Yeah.
the importance of utilizing those when they do the install. So
Yeah, and then the stiffener too, is to Ken's point, is the pull-out strength, right? So we've done testing, engineering's done testing where they use an insert stiffener and we're seeing high performance, and if they test it with no stiffener, then your pull-out strength like significantly goes down. So that just proves the importance of the stiffener is the pull-out strength testing that our engineering team does here.
Great.
So yeah.
Worth that extra step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had a couple questions about lead. So we'll start with the first one here. So what do you see as the biggest challenges companies will face when complying with the EPA for replacement of existing lead service lines? And that was from Jerry R. in Augusta County.
Yeah, so what we've been hearing, the biggest challenges for the utilities out there is just finding the lead. Yeah, so there's the record, like finding where that lead is. So basically that's going to be the biggest challenge as far as our customers is finding that lead and then figuring out the most economical way to get it out of the ground.
And access, just access to get in, because you have to dig all that up from the street to the house. So if you're in a big city or, access will be a big thing. And then today's challenges are vendor issues or supply issues. How long will that last?
Is everybody the same as far as, when you talk about getting the lead out of the ground, is there varying degrees of requirements that you're seeing as far as across the United States of what needs to be done once lead is, found or to be replaced?
Well, I have heard where cities are now starting to take inventory. So they're wanting to find out how much is in there, where it's at, what they're going to have to deal with, and what the expenses is going to be.
Sure.
So there are going to be some challenges with just that, is finding all of the lead lines.
Yeah, and you make a great point. It's going to be a little bit easier maybe in Iowa somewhere to tackle that project versus like downtown city of Chicago.
Yes,
The cost and the impact digging those up will be huge.
yes.
So Bruce P. Posted a comment on Facebook and said, I was told my house may have a water line with lead. Is this something I should be worried about?
I think the biggest thing with that is if you are concerned, is just contact whoever you pay your water bill to. So like here in the city of Dubuque, I sign my check and it goes to the city of Dubuque. So if you're concerned about having a lead line, contact the city. And then they may like to get that phone call because then they know you have lead in your service, and it will be one that will be on their list to hopefully be removed in the near future. So the biggest thing is, if you're concerned about a lead line, contact your water utility or water authority, whoever you're getting that water from.
So in one of the earlier episodes, there's talk about the silver way, where the older generation is in the working in our different utilities, and so one of the questions from Paul A was, with the high percentage of professionals within the industry, what do you see as the best strategy for newcomers to learn from these experienced people, and is there an attempt to capture some of this knowledge somewhere before it's lost?
Yeah, I'd say you're seeing it right here on the set. So you got Ken and you have me, so it's really making sure you have a succession plan in place. So you have seasoned people like Ken, who's been here for 20 years. I've been here 10, but I've only been in the waterworks side for 4. So, just making sure you have that succession plan within your companies, that the important knowledge can be passed down from generation to generation. So, and Ken's been doing it for 20 years here, so he has a lot of experience to answer the difficult questions and get the information we need. So.
And you need the newbie has to have a willingness to learn too.
Exactly,
you kind of
yeah.
just need to be a sponge and take in whatever you possibly can.
Yeah, good.
I think that was a polite way that Jim just called Ken old.
I think so.
I mean, that was just what I heard.
Hey,
that's
you
all
dinosaur, teach me
yeah.
everything you know.
I know Ken well enough that I can kind of razzle about that. But,
That succession plan
Yeah.
is good.
Yeah.
and I think the other thing too is that look for the manufacturers that provide the tools that you need from a standpoint of whether it be AYU training courses, which we have AYU courses, also online courses, and having experts such as Ken and Jim in house to answer those tough questions is a huge benefit for our end users.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, the younger generation wants everything at their fingertips on their phone. So I think that's where AYU comes in handy, just because they can access that even when the dinosaurs leave. We did have a couple of product-specific questions. So Zach O. from Reams said, does AY manufacture a tool to turn off and on the curb stop fittings?
The curb stop fittings. So that to me would be a curb stop out of her book. And we do make handles, we make rods.
Yep. So like a T-handle rod.
Yep. So typically a curb stop would be down at the bottom of a curb box, and you put a rod down through there and turn it off and on. Yes, we make them, we sell them.
Blake B. from City of North Plains said, is there any thought to incorporate an integral handle for a product such as 76101M?
Now, before you
Either of
answer,
you know what that
there you
is?
go.
Well, the
Walking
previous
catalogs.
question, I was going to joke, like, Ken, remember, it's our 305B key, right? And like when I saw them, like, these guys are insane because they can remember every single part number. And so my predecessor, Rick David, he would just rattle numbers off like, that he did in his sleep. And so, 4 years into it, I'm pretty good with the mile numbers. But, yeah, so this integral handle valve, we already have it, don't we? Or am I wrong?
Yeah.
What is the 76101M?
That's a model. 76101 is our model number for a ball valve.
It's a
Okay.
ball valve, and it has an M, so it's a meter ball valve. So
So
in
they want to
that,
know if we're going to incorporate an integral handle for that.
Yep.
well, you can purchase a handle to put on an existing, and you just pin it on through the hole in the cap of the valve, or you can order it new with just adding HDLB to that number.
Okay, so
And
take
hold on.
note of that, Blake B.
Yeah, and HDLB stands for, because it always has something to stand for. It stands for,
Yeah,
Handle brass.
yeah,
Okay.
brass handle. Yeah, or you can, if you want it built right into the valve, it's F, so fixed handle, FH.
see?
It's going to take me a
I
few
mean,
more years before
yeah,
I get those
I know.
numbers down.
Well,
Yeah.
the point of that is you can order a
Yeah.
valve with a handle
Yeah. That's
great.
now. Yes,
And the
Great
handle
point.
is fixed, not just bolted onto the.
not
the
an aftermarket.
Yeah, not aftermarket. Yeah.
Good.
Kind of tying into some of the lead line questions we asked earlier, we had a conversation earlier about why is there risk to having lead lines. So do you want to just elaborate for people that maybe haven't, studied that or been up on that a lot?
So normally lead is fine as long as you don't disturb it. Meaning, if someone's digging around the lead line and they're going to cut the line, you're exposing that lead to the water, and so anytime you disturb it, it opens up areas where the water can touch it. So as long as you're not disturbing that line, it should be fine, because water has a natural bacteria in it, and it'll create a lining on that pipe. And so that lining keeps the water away from the interior surface of the lead. So that's why people aren't getting sick from drinking water out of lead lines, because of this good bacteria in the inside the lead line. So once that bacteria or something comes in there and disturbs that good bacteria, then there could be cause of concern, because the water can then touch lead, which can leach into the water. So
it's the potential of
Yeah.
risk driving the lead line replacement to
Exactly.
just eliminate
So
the possibility.
It's very similar to if you read up on the asbestos, what happened there. So there's a lot of asbestos in older buildings, but as long as that's not disturbed or covered, it's normally fine. But as soon as someone starts trying to remove that, the particles gets into the air and into your lungs. So it's kind of the same concept behind lead and asbestos. Why it's not good for you. So
Okay.
Great.
So the water flowing through the line doesn't necessarily pick up the lead, because there's a film inside the lining of the pipe.
So Ken and Jim, we appreciate taking the time, and we also appreciate all that you've done for us here at AY McDonald, and for those customers out there and who've called in the waterworks industry and had questions about our waterworks department. I'm sure you've talked to either Ken or Jim, and they're a wealth of knowledge and information. So thank
The
you.
walking catalogs.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for having us on.
All right, we're back with more questions, and Nicole Newhouse from our gas department and Steve Potts from our pump department.
First one goes to you, Potsy. By the way, welcome back. If no one out there knows this, Potsy is our very first repeat visitor on AY After Hours. So congratulations. You don't win anything, but congratulations.
Yeah, my third time.
Yeah, it was. And so people who pay attention, you only saw 2 of them because the first one was not that great. So,
That one got cut.
yeah, it got cut. So Potsy, we got one for you here. Is water pressure highest at the top or the bottom of a water tower? And that comes from Tom P. from Delco Water.
Oh, good. I do have to admit that I did have to do some research on this just to make sure that I had my information correct, but it is higher at the bottom than it is at the top, because it's like, and I reference it to scuba diving. The farther down you go, the more pressure there is. So it's at the bottom.
Okay, good.
Cool. Kathy S. posted a question on Facebook, and she wants to know, our kitchen water pressure seems to be low. We have our own well. Can we increase it somehow?
Okay, good question. There's a couple things, or 2 or 3 things that go into this. One, when you're dealing with pressure in a house and you have a well, I would want to call a licensed pump installer, because there's you can set the pressure up on the pressure switch, but that's close to electricity. So we never recommend that somebody other than a licensed electrician or a pump installer do it. But there are a couple things that she can check on her own. One, the water softener. If she has a water softener, turn the water softener to bypass and see if the water pressure gets any better. Or if they have a whole house filter, change the filter, and that might help increase. Otherwise, you could, if it's an older house, you could have pipes that are too small going to the sink. So there's a few things that she can check on her own, but if it's anything to do with the pressure switch, then I would call a licensed installer.
Okay, good. So Nicole, this one's for you. I know you didn't want to sit here and listen to Steve all day. Trust me.
No, really,
I've
I
done
do.
that for more than a few minutes. So Josie from Oberkampf Supply asks, how does a gas regulator work, such as the spring or the orifice?
Okay. So we don't actually manufacture the regulators, but we do include them in our MSAs. So what I did is I reached out to our engineers so that I made sure I got a good technical answer.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to read a little bit of this if that's okay. Most natural gas regulators are direct operated or self-operated pressure reducing valves. The spring valve applies pressure against the incoming pressure of the gas line, and that enables the opening of the valve just enough to pressurize downstream of the house side according to the pressure level requirement. And so the orifice itself is the amount of gas that can enter the regulator while the spring and diaphragm work to maintain a constant pressure downstream. And the regulator, like I mentioned before, is part of the meter set assembly, and that is specified by the utility as to what they're approved within their system, and those two would be set according to their approval process. And just as a note, this is part of the utility's meter set assembly, so it's owned by them. So a customer would never want to make any adjustments to the spring or the orifice.
And so the purpose of the gas regulator is, in the name of it, is just to basically reduce and regulate the amount of gas coming into a home or a business.
Correct.
So taking it down a level so it's safer. Is
Correct.
That kinda...
So a lot of our systems come out, it would be maybe 60 PSI coming out of the ground, and most people have 7 inches of water column. So that regulator is really going to reduce it down to the correct size for the house.
So even though you may, like, when you look at the outside of a house and you see a meter set assembly, they look identical. They may have the exact same parts and everything, but really they're customized for each one of the different gas utilities, so to speak, because of the difference in pressure?
Very much so.
Okay.
And oftentimes, even though we may get in that same regulator, out in the field, as they're setting that based off of that house, the technician themselves can make minor changes to that spring in order to make sure that the correct flow is coming into the home.
But again, that's a technician only, not to be done by homeowners or anything along those lines.
Very much so.
Don't
yes.
touch the regulator.
That's right. Or anything on the MSA.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
exactly.
Well, for safety, for one, but the second part of that is, it's pre the meter itself, which is really the cash register. So by fiddling with that, the customer is really not gaining anything by it, except causing potentially a safety hazard.
Good.
Another gas question that came in from Tyler J. off of Facebook. He said, where does natural gas come from? And I feel like Doug would have so many jokes about this
I
one.
do.
But
Well,
let's
not-
defer
it's,
to
you know,
Nicole.
it's not appropriate at this time, and Potsy's over there with a little smirk on his face. So
This was a family show.
Yeah.
Thank you,
exactly.
Tyler J.
Yeah.
So where does natural gas come from? Natural gas comes from hundreds of millions of years ago, pressure underneath rocks and formation. It's made up from plants and animals that have been applied to pressure underneath. So basically, think of like coal in a sense, but natural gas is the gas form of that. I did look up because I wanted to make sure there are certain states, top producing states within the United States, Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, Wyoming, and Louisiana. And they make up over 50% of the natural gas produced in the United States.
All right, Potsy, we're coming back to you here real quick. So here's a question that Kathy S. Posted on Facebook. Our kitchen water pressure seems to be low. We have our own well. Did you already ask that? Son of I should pay attention when you
Sorry,
actually talk
Kathy
to
S.
Potsy. Yeah. All right. Potsy, here's a pump question for you. Alan H. Posted this on Facebook. Is it true that if your water heater is set too high, you use more water?
No. The only way you're going to use more water out of your water heater is open the faucet.
They're independent of each other, right?
Yep. You can use more energy if you have the thermostat too high in your water heater. You can cause scalding problems if it's too high. But when you do turn it up, your hot water lasts longer the higher the temperature you go. So I wouldn't recommend turning it up past what the water heater people recommend because of scalding problems. But no, you can't get more water out of it.
Another water-related question from Jeremy D. Off of Facebook. How many times a year should you get your well water tested?
Once a year, and you should do it in the spring of the year. And typically, most people check for nitrates and bacteria, and you do it in the spring of the year because if you're going to have a problem with your casing leaking, or if you have a shift in the ground below, you'll notice when the snow all melts, or if you get a heavy rain, then you will start to have your water will start to get dirty, and that's a problem. But everybody that's on a well should check their nitrates and bacteria once a year in the spring.
So you talk about getting it tested and look for the nitrates and so forth. I'm sure this varies depending on areas of the country and so forth, but where do you take that to get tested? What do you usually do?
Usually to the public health.
Okay.
Or the county. We have the county health people. Well, you can either have somebody come out and do it, or you can do it yourself. But there's some specific things that you need to do so you don't contaminate it.
Probably
So,
how you collect the sample is
yeah,
pretty important.
Yeah.
Good.
And
Okay.
and the dirtiest faucet to take a test out of is your kitchen faucet. You should take that water test as close to the pressure tank as you can.
Interesting. Dirtiest water because of all the travel through the pipes
Yep.
and so forth.
Well, no, it's the outside of the faucet from people
Right.
touching it, cleaning. They always say chicken is one of the worst things to contaminate stuff. That's it's on your faucet. So they always tell you not to do the kitchen faucet.
Yeah, we just had to test the water at our house, and there was like very specific instructions on time of day and when it was used last, and then leave the sample outside the door to be collected. So,
Nicole, question from Kyle Harris here at AY McDonald. His question is how does natural gas compare with other traditional energy sources?
Good question. I kind of looked at two. Propane obviously is the most like natural gas, and then electricity would be the second. So propane itself is about 4 times cost-wise, 4 times more expensive than natural gas. However, natural gas does burn twice as fast. So yes, cost-wise, natural gas in the end is a much more efficient cost than propane. The second to that is most propane tanks are homeowner owned. Therefore, there's some maintenance that's involved with a propane tank that they have to do annually. So there would be some additional costs that would be involved in that. For electricity, natural gas is 4 times less expensive than electricity. So for areas like the Midwest, for example, where heating costs are a big part of the winters, electricity is not the most efficient way of heating a home cost-wise. And really, natural gas has just been an excellent, an excellent
Source of energy.
source of energy. Yeah.
Jessica C. from 4 County Supply wants to know, what is the deepest a well system can be installed?
That all depends on, one, how many gallons a minute the well will produce, the water level that's in the well where it's at. I've been around pumps that were, the deepest one that I ever installed was 800 feet. But there's stuff that goes a lot deeper than that. I mean, it all depends on, we sell 8 and 10 inch motors that typically they'll go, you can have them up to 1,000 feet deep. So.
Is there a standard, like typically a certain depth, or it's just so
No,
diverse?
it's like around here, if you go down by the Mississippi, those are roughly, the pump is roughly sitting, maybe 100 feet, 75 feet. You go up on top of the hill up there, Highway 20, those are 500 footers up there.
Okay.
So it all depends on the elevation of the ground, but there's not a specific depth that all pumps are set to. It's just, it has to do with how many gallons a minute the well will produce.
It's hard to imagine 800 feet. That's just,
Yeah.
It takes a while to do those.
yeah.
So we do have, not specific questions as far as, but we thought that you guys might have a little bit of input on this. So as far as Nicole, what are some of the biggest challenges in the manufacturing and distributing process moving into 2022? And that comes from Laura L. at Dakota Supply Group.
Okay, good question. Obviously, it's top of mind right now. For us, I would say in the natural gas, supply chain is our biggest challenge right now, shoring up those supply chains currently, as well as balancing those with increased demand and making sure that every one of those orders that we're getting in right now is actually something that's going to be put in the ground and not sitting on a shelf. So we want to make sure all of our customers are equally getting their products so everybody can kind of keep their head above water right now, is our biggest challenge. And then communicating that out to our customers is a big challenge this year. Challenge, opportunity, I guess, in a sense. It's a way for us to really connect with our customers and make sure we're doing everything we can in order to get them the product they need.
The interesting part about that, I think, too, is that, people look at the end product and they say, okay, well, here's a meter set assembly. There's one part. Well, what went into that one part was hundreds of other little parts. And if that one little part is missing, if you look at regulators and there's 30 parts in a regulator, however many that is, if one little part's missing, that extends. Yeah, it's just a snowball effect. And a lot of people don't understand that is a huge part of that as well, too. So.
Yeah, and I know this year, like, transparency is a huge focus in all of your groups in terms of the more you communicate and the earlier you can get the information out, it gives the customer a better shot at managing the delays. So I know our teams do a pretty good job of that, I think.
Yeah. It's a major initiative for AY, McDonald as a company, an initiative from across the board. We call it the WMS, Where's My Stuff? And that's what we're trying to get out to customers as much as possible and try to be as, do as good a job communicating that as possible. So it's very important. Well, Steve and Nicole, we want to thank you for joining us today and giving us some of your input as far as both the natural gas industry and as well as the pumps industry. And I know that we're now going to be doing something that everyone's been waiting for. So Kelly, take it away.
Yep. Being we have you captive here, you can help us. We're going to draw a name from everybody that submitted a question to us, and the person we draw will win this cooler and all of the goodies we talked about previously inside of it. So Patsy, do you want to do the honors and pick a name?
Is it true that Doug's got 5 in here?
If it says Steve Potts, it's going back in. All right. Drum roll. And the winner is Darren Steichel. So Darren will be reaching out to you to send you your prize. And thank you for submitting your question.
Yeah, and thanks to everybody for submitting their questions. Because of the limited time that we have, we didn't go over all the questions, and we appreciate that. But in future podcasts, we'll be discussing some of those. But we do appreciate everybody's input, and we look for that moving forward as well. And so thank you for watching and joining us here at AY After Hours. And feel free to visit us at aymcdonald.com or all of our socials, or email us at ayafterhours@aymcdonald.com.
You
Did I do it?
Well, not to be nitpicking,
I know, I was like,
not to nitpick, but you did just say thanks for watching. There might be people just listening.